All right, everybody, welcome back to the Along the Watchtower podcast. I am your host, LM Walker. Today is Thursday, February 18th, 2021. I remembered. Uh, and I have I've actually been kind of entangled today with the markets and everything related to it. Today was the GameStop, Wall Street Bets, Reddit committee, the House committee, and there's actually a lot of very pertinent and interesting information, a lot of lies that were spewed as were expected. Maxine Waters, okay, to dovetail it to the political, right, because this is not a financial show. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm merely an amateur investor, an amateur retail investor, learning the ropes and finding out, behind the scenes, the machinations of one of the strongest, longest, and most influential institutions within our nation and probably our planet, right? The financial sector, and specifically, the trading and the trading and dealing of securities. And then there's like ETFs and friggin' options and all sorts of stuff. Just dealing and dealings with securities, and the trading and trading of companies, the shares of companies, and it's been fascinating, and it's only been really probably I'd say about 7 or 8 months. That hasn't been very long, and I've learned quite a bit. And it's just like this show. There's much more to come. But that being said, what we found, right, was despite the numbers that had been presented, there were claims that that Melvin did not have Plotkin from the Melvin Mutual, Melvin Capital, whatever, claims he did not have an extended naked position on GameStop. Okay, fine. I mean, the math is there. 359 million shares and something like $2 billion didn't end up getting into the hands of whom they were supposed to, for one reason or another. There's other things, but again, this is not a financial show. We don't need to go down in there. Maxine Waters was the point I was getting to. Maxine Waters was one of the more vocal and vehement in the earlier days of the Trump presidency, opponents of Trump, and one of the proponents and supporters of, going into the streets and literally combating conservatives. And, this led to a slew of the knockout game. This is where you saw like old white people being like knocked out and, sent to the hospital and concussed, things like that. So, and I'm not suggesting that she ordered them to, but the correlation is there. The fact remains is that zealotry is zealotry. And this has been existing long before Maxine Waters, long before Obama. I remember during the Bush administration, all right, anti-war protesters becoming violent in a way that Antifa very much is, and so this isn't anything new. This has been happening long before you or I. And that isn't to say that all anti-war protesters were violent. I mean, I've been to plenty of non-violent rallies. That's the thing about zealotry. It can crop up in any corner of any ideology. You can always have an extreme version of anything. But that being said, one of the core principles that I always stand by, I always talk about, right? One of the core tenets and axioms I espouse is to not stand by a political party, a person, or politician, but by your principles and by your policies. And although I may not agree with Maxine Waters a good portion of the time, what she did today at this committee hearing was devastatingly precise and critical and constructive and brilliant. And I stand in awe of her tenacity and her candor, just straight to the point, cut and dry. Answer the question. No. This is how she was, like almost verbatim. No. I don't want to hear all that, sir. Just answer the question, yes or no. Well, you know what? I don't have time for that. You're wasting my. It just, and the whole thing is like, all right, well, this is, it's Reddit. Who cares? It's like, no, you don't understand. This was I'm trying to quantify. That's the thing. The situation that occurred with GameStop was was unquantifiable. It was unforeseeable because it required the extension of the stock to be shorted beyond the amount of shares that were available in the stock. So that's why no one thought it was going to happen, because everyone who regulates either is a part of it. Well, let me not speculate. That's why no one thought it was going to happen. That much we do know is that because prediction models for anything like this had to deal with naked shorting and having a naked position. That means you're shorting with shares that don't actually exist, right? So of course you're not going to enter that into the model. That's illegal. No one would do that. Blah, 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 blah. So here we are. And so they said that, and it's just like, well, guys, yes, of course it was unforeseen as to actually happen because they made shares come out of nowhere. It was like 121% shorted over, or naked shorted at one point. And I think it was larger than that when the squeeze, or the first squeeze. I personally think the squeeze already happened, guys. Sorry. When the first squeeze happened, and it spikes to 43, which I'm pretty sure I saw it at 503. But again, that's neither here nor there. We know for sure it peaked at 43. At that point, I'm pretty sure it was like 171% shorted, which obviously over 100% is non-existent. So, but we shall see. As far as the AMCs out there, I'm not a financial advisor, but diamond hands. Moving along. So I was really encapsulated by, I'm not going to say her performance. There was some performative protesting and protestations that were expressed, and it was to be expected. This is a big deal as far as like on a progressive populist demographic, right? This definitely speaks to the working class. The story of a guy who immigrated from, I forgot, Bulgaria, Poland, something like that, with his grandfather or something like that. It's the story of a guy whose family immigrated to America, who, he came up, had nothing, was homeless, lost his job, multiple jobs, happened to, this is deep friggin' value, happened to get a job with a financial firm creating financial education classes, started investing in order to make some money, and he hasn't been investing for very long, apparently. However, came to the prospect of GameStop, yada yada yada. But people eat that shit up because the tale of hedge fund managers, of Wall Street establishment cronies, and their well endowed money being taken from them and given to guys who have nothing, just like everybody else, is enamoring, right? And you can't make this up. They eat that stuff up. So of course there was a lot of performative grandstanding to go along with the actual informative meeting, but it was very, very informative, very critical. And to see these people, some of them stutter and shake, and it was a good time. It was a good time. I only got halfway through it, and it was a good time. But then, this started to affect crypto and stuff like that. So I've been all over the place, but that's the monologue. Me, gawking over Maxine Waters and whining a little bit. There you go. Please like, share, and subscribe. Other than that, if you like what I'm doing, I'm going to always try to do it better, do it bigger. But yeah, with that said, let's get into it. I wanted to start off with something a little more upbeat and definitely on the scientific tip. I was excited about this. NASA's Perseverance rover makes a safe landing on Mars. As space travel becomes more commercialized, right? Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. We're supposed to have a polar moon base by 2025. I think I think the beginning of manufacturing for something like that can happen, but obviously there's no way we're going to be able to construct the means to bring the material and the manpower, let alone train and prepare and do it and finish it in less than 4 years during the middle of a pandemic. Not going to happen. However, as space travel becomes more commercialized, as the private industry becomes more involved into it, we saw SpaceX recently deliver the largest payload of satellites in history. And, large payloads, a large capacity, the ability for larger payloads, of course, means a lot of people. And this is why we have the first privatized mission around the Earth's orbit being done right now. They're training for that. That's supposed to happen in next October. I forgot how much tickets were. I want to say they're either 25,000 or 250,000. I know that's a vast difference of 100 times, but still, nonetheless, it's still fascinating. 100 times, 100,000, 200,000, but 225,000. Anyway, point is, what's going on with the development of space and I don't want to say colonization, but the inhabiting of space, the investigation, the researching, and it's exciting. It leaves me speechless. But let's read LA Times. NASA's newest rover touched down safely on the surface of Mars at 12:55 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday, completing a 293 million mile journey through space and setting the stage for a mission that seeks to find evidence of ancient extraterrestrial life. We back, baby! UFO nerds, we back, son! No, I mean, ancient astronaut theory aside, knowing and having any idea of any sort of previous civilization of any kind, whether it be sophisticated and intelligent or primitive and or very naturalistic in nature, very a sort of fauna that's integrated with the environment, right? And it's just some sort of it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's just like some sort of unicellular organism, blob thing. It doesn't matter. Just having that sort of that shift in perspective is always going to be one of the tipping stones towards pushing humanity's maturity forward. Now that's one of many, right? Unfortunately, the end of life as we know it also can be a tipping stone too. When you lose everything, it tends to be a trauma that gives you an opportunity to change your perspective permanently, right? A crisis from which you can arise a better, different, changed person. Humanity as a whole hasn't really had something like that since World War II. Now, one could argue this pandemic is one of those moments. It's definitely a critical, pertinent moment. But I think more than the pandemic in and of itself, at least at this point, because we don't know. In a few years, we could have Songbird, and the mortality rate could spike, and by having a mutation or two, we don't know. The time will tell. But as of right now, it is the collateral damage of the lockdowns. It's really the collateral damage of the reaction to, and it's not just the government reaction. It is the psychological impact and the reaction to that impact as a whole by our species that has been, I feel like, much more devastating than just the pandemic outright. But let's keep this on a positive note before we go down that route. The 6 wheels of the 2,260-pound Perseverance rover landed in Jezero Crater, a former lakebed once fed by flowing water that scientists say would have been a welcome home for microbes in Mars's warmer, wetter past. If they're right, the remains of those long-dead microbes should now reside in the sediments there. Joyful team members in mission control. And just to be clear, they're not talking about ancient astronauts. They're looking for microbial, tiny, very tiny microscopic microbial evidence of life, looking for evidence of water. They're not necessarily looking for any evidence of intelligent civilizations. We still have the Fermi paradox in play here, so... joyful team members in mission control at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in La La Canada Flint Ridge could not hug or high. That's how I can't stop smiling, and so I can't close my mouth enough to say La Cañada, maybe. Flint Ridge could not hug or high five one another as they would in a non-pandemic times, right? But even their doubled up masks, the doubled up mask, whose top layer was adorned with a stylized image of the rover, didn't hide the smiles on their faces as they clapped and cheered a few feet apart. Some bumped fists with those around them, while others shook them triumphantly in the air. NASA works. NASA works, said Rob Henning, JPL's chief engineer and a veteran of many Mars missions. When we put our arms together and our hands together and our brains together, we can succeed. This is what NASA does. This is what we can do as a country on all of the problems we have. We need to work together to do these kinds of things and make success happen. Within moments of the landing, the rover transmitted 2 black and white images from its hazard cameras showing the Martian terrain, with disturbed dust still floating from the rover's touchdown. Hello world, my first look at my forever home. That's kind of sad when you say. Anyway, it's a very neat black and white picture on a Twitter that needs to load, if you'll just bear with me, listeners. And I mean, it's what you would expect. It's a black and white cratered landscape. And, yeah, I'm not going to stare at it because then there'll just be a lot of dead air. Fascinating. Anyway, so meanwhile on Earth, Walmart raises wages for 425,000 associates. About half of U.S. employees now earn $15 per hour. It's a move in the right direction. This is one of the benefits, and because right now it seems like when anyone says anything, when anyone tries to give an analysis of anything that's happening, people's immediate reaction is to dismiss you or to become angry, I guess, in fear of any negative critique you may give. And it's like, well, no, people don't like to disseminate anything. It's either good or bad, and it's simply black or white. It is what it is, and they can't handle the nuance of anything anymore. We are trauma. This is trauma. We are traumatized. This is trauma. It's one of the, despite any negatives that come out of this administration, one thing that's happened that's been great from, the cancel culture war that's been going on is the fact that corporations, right? We keep talking about this. They now find it profitable to do what people, and that's like the irony is that the byproduct, the severity of the punitive action that cancel culture can bring to a person and to a corporation, and it cuts both ways. You have Gillette, where you have that ad campaign, Men Do Better, and they basically just shame men outright, as if there's no decent men before this Gillette commercial, and they lost $8 billion off their market share, their market cap for that. Okay? $8 billion. And so it cuts both ways. But in terms of this, you have the severity of the cancel culture war being so volatile that corporations now find it profitable to do the right thing, to do the progressive thing on a worker, and this is a tangible level. This isn't just like putting black squares in the beginning in their stores and stuff. This is tangible, physical, beneficial to people's lives. So at least there's that. It's a step in the right direction. Let's read. Walmart, the nation's largest private employer, is raising wages for 425,000 of its nearly 1.5 million employees. We completed a strong year and a strong quarter four thanks to our amazing associates. Wait, why are they not doing it for all of them? They stepped up to serve our customers and our members exceptionally well during a busy holiday period in the midst of a pandemic. Change in retail accelerated in 2020. The capabilities we've built in previous years puts us ahead, and we're going to stay ahead. Our business is strong, and we're making it even stronger with targeted investments to accelerate growth, including raises for 425,000 associates in frontline roles driving the customer experience. This said the CEO. In a memo to U.S. associates obtained by Yahoo Finance, U.S. CEO John Furner said the wages for Walmart's 425,000 store associates in the digital and stocking work groups would increase to a range of 13 to 19. Would increase to a range of $13 to $19 per hour, depending on location and market. Oh Lord, the pay increase will take effect on March 13th. I can't remember the last time I made less than $13 an hour. Wow, that's horrific. And I mean, I understand that, the cost of living is different in each area, but wow. This is an investment in our people. At the same time, we make new investments in our supply chain. With Thursday's pay raise, Walmart now has about 730,000 U.S. store associates, approximately half of its workforce, earning $15 or more per hour. And then in September, they did something similar, but, that's where the good news stops. Because here comes the culture war. Sarah Silverman, Jared Kushner, could act as a Nazi in the movie. Right, so Sarah Silverman was a vocal member of the cancel mob, and she got called out herself for, doing a skit, dressing as Hitler. And some of the jokes that she said, and now they've caught another joke that she said. This is the thing. Most of it has been from I feel like it's because it's from the Sarah Silverman show. It's from a skit from her show, which I think is 15 years old. Okay, so the thing about it is, in this society, in this war, there's no room for apology. There is room for capitulation, but there's no and retraction, but there's no room for growth. So even one of their own, and this is the thing that I always find interesting about the left, that I'll at least concede to conservatives, although conservatives cannibalize themselves too. Generally speaking, in the last 20 years of my life, just viewing politics from outside, just as a minor interest, and then becoming more interested as I grew older, it's generally the left that cannibalizes itself. It's generally the left that eats its own. It's generally the right that will do anything, and most of what they do is very, and it's, I try to do my best to serve it evenly, because none of these people care about us, right? And you try to sort out their individual proclivities and not proclivities, but the individual things that you want to be disdainful about, the sorts of nefarious, corrupt, misanthropic actions that they conduct and attitudes that they hold. But at the end of the day, it's two sides of the same coin. It's one extreme or the other, right? Either they don't care about you because they want a bunch of money, or they don't care about you because they find you that you're less than a person, because this is a class war at the end of the day, and that still comes back to money. Or they don't care about you because they're just careerists, which comes back to owing favors to the people that gives them money for the campaigns that they run. All of this comes back to the wealth that they withhold from us. All right. So the reality at the end of the day for me is just making sure that anyone I speak to, anyone that listens to me, anyone that watches me, understands that I don't hold bias to either party. Okay, I liked Ron Paul, I liked Bernie Sanders, I liked Tulsi Gabbard, and I liked Ron Paul, I liked Bernie Sanders, and then I realized I don't need to carry the flag of these people to still be a supporter of the principles and ideals that they're representing. And so I started to represent the ideals. I started to be proponents of the individual laws and policies, but that required me to pay attention more. And that's the responsibility of the voter, I think, and of the citizen, right? It's on the individual to take responsibility and be informed, be engaged. Anyway, I digress. Let's go back into Sarah Silverman, because the point is, at the end of the day, she was at the beginning, she was at the forefront of the celebrity arm of the cancel mob, and then they canceled her. And she's not the only one. And I mean, just because she was a soldier in it doesn't mean she can't be a victim. It is what it is. I feel for her. I like Sarah Silverman a lot. I think she's funny, and I actually was familiar with the skit that they're referring to. And I mean, not everything she did was funny, but she was an edgy comedian, and that was the thing. She was edgy in sort of the light of George Carlin, not nearly as clever. Yeah, much more on the nose than George Carlin. Carlin was situational. We're not even going to go down a comedy thing. Anyway, Sarah Silverman. Jared Kushner could act as a Nazi in a movie. Jewish actress and comedian Sarah Silverman said that if a film was looking to cast someone to play a Nazi, Jared Kushner could do it. If you were casting, and this isn't even old, she just recently said this. If you were casting a Nazi in a movie, he'd be called in, she said on the Sarah Silverman podcast on February 11th. Everyone goes to do a podcast. Silverman 50 made the comment in response to a question from a caller who expressed frustration at Kushner, the grandson of a Holocaust survivor, for not speaking out against the inappropriateness of Holocaust-related garments worn by some neo-Nazis who stormed the Capitol and the U.S. Capitol. The caller referenced in specific a writer who wore a Camp Auschwitz sweatshirt, which also featured the inscription, "Work brings freedom," a translation of the German phrase that hangs over the entrance of the concentration camp in Poland. She also referenced an image widely circulated after the Capitol riot, but which was later shown to have been taken at an earlier event of a man in a black t-shirt that said 6MWE, right, 6 million were not enough, but that was taken at an earlier event. How does Jared Kushner not address this, speak out against this, or resign, anything, Silverman addressed the question by first commenting on his appearance. First of all, I've never seen someone so not Jewish looking. Where do I begin? That's like people looking at me and saying I don't look like, you don't dress like most black people do. You know how many times I've heard that? I don't know. It's like, well, wait a minute. Saying I don't dress, I don't look like them, I like what black people do, I don't talk like most black. All these comments, they're all the sorts of stifling. I mean, here's the thing. There are commonalities, right? The hijab is something commonly worn by Muslim women. So if you see someone with a hijab, I think it's safe to presume that she's probably Muslim. I wouldn't fault you if they weren't Muslim, right? And she was like, no, I'm not Muslim. I just like the hair. I just like the head garb. You're just like, oh, okay, right? So, and right, you got to be careful. And oh my God. So, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So, there's stereotypes, yes, but like there are stereotypes for a reason. I think George Carlin would agree at this point. Stereotypes for a reason. And so the whole thing is like, I can understand when, in certain cases with certain things, you're like, oh, you don't look like what I would expect somebody look like. Okay, well, what do you mean by that? And then da. So in certain cases, that's understandable. And I mean, there's some people from other states who think everyone in Texas wears cowboy hats, so on and so forth. Everyone in New York wears a fitted hat. Like, there are certain things that you feel that you would expect. Everyone has expectations. That's to be expected. Here's the thing. Oh, it gets worse. I just finished reading it. See, if you gave him tiny circle specs, he would look like a Nazi doctor, like Dr. Mengele. That's horrible. We've talked about Joseph Mengele on the show. He was a doctor, which we actually used the research from. He did live experiments in people's brains. He worked for the SS, yada, yada. He was a psychopath. Although his research did help forward both the physicianship and understanding of the human brain, as well as the psychology of humans in certain situations, yada, yada, yada. We don't need to go down that road. But that is horrible. That's a horrible thing to say about someone. The first thing was that he said, you're not Jewish. It's like, well, what? You're talking about his nose? Is that what you're saying? Isn't this, what she's saying could be taken as like something edgy and funny that she usually says. But then as soon as you say, like, yeah, if you gave him, you can only, oh my God. So I guess the rules are, you can be called a Nazi or referenced to a Nazi, but you yourself cannot reference to a Nazi or Nazism unless you are of the cadre that is appropriate for the time and culture, for the zeitgeist. However, given that she has been previously canceled by the cancel mob, what's going to happen here? I wonder. Well, probably nothing, because it's being said against Jared Kushner. Now, if this were being, because remember, after the Gina Carano thing, a Jewish journalist, came out and made it all about him. Oh, anti-Semitism, yada yada yada, and she got the third degree. So what's going to happen here is probably nothing, because she's of the left, and they've already eaten her alive, and she had a movie role going up. She lost that. She's been sent to the corner of the internet where she has a podcast that I didn't even know she has, and I bet no one does. This is on some random publication that, like, oh, well, NewsGuard says that the publication is verified, so at least NewsGuard knows it exists. And yeah, life will just go on. That's the hypocrisy. That's the hypocrisy. And it goes on, but I'm not. Well, let's finish. Let's actually put it in context. Okay. So first of all, well, this is what she says. First of all, I've never seen someone so not Jewish looking. If you gave him tiny circle specs, he would look like a Nazi doctor, like a Dr. Mengele. She then backtracked her comparison to the Nazi doctor who conducted sinister medical experiments on Jewish and other inmates in Auschwitz. That's actually not true. None of that matters, of course, when he looks like a Beaks official. Yeah, exactly. She realized that she was being a hypocrite by conducting the same. This is what I constantly talk about. Do not become the monster you were trying to slay. Conducting yourself in the same way, the same manner, with the same sort of poison, the same sort of toxicity, makes you, it aligns you with the people, the same sort of ideology, extremism that you're trying to call out, right? The person you are speaking about is literally, right, the stepson of the embodiment of hate that you call out on a daily basis for the past 4 years, yet here you are using the same sort of hatred, the same sort of hateful rhetoric that you're claiming he does. Like, in calling him a Nazi, you were espousing bigoted rhetoric, and it is so frustrating. And again, I've loved Sarah Silverman. I've been watching her and listening to her my whole life. Again, I've never understood, other than the clout that comes with it, why, especially people like her, it was only a matter of time, right? She was super edgy. This is what I'm saying. Like, I knew once they came for her that they were going to. I wasn't surprised. But here she is, even in the corner of the internet. Now, because she's in a corner of the internet no one gives a shit about, she's just going off. But fine. Yeah. So, there's that. Let's see. Democrats. Biden criticized dismissal of student loan forgiveness. Yeah, Business Insider still wants me to sign up, and it's not going to happen, bro. It's just not going to happen. But is anyone surprised? I mean, he went on and said that the $15 minimum wage was probably not going to have legs, and he wasn't sure if it was going to. And it's like, sis, seriously, you've been doing this for 40 years. You know how this goes. You go on national television and say, hey, as the president of the United States, this thing that you guys all want, I don't think it's going to pass. Well, it's certainly not going to get off the ground, sir, if you're not at the very least, going to go out in public and support it. Several top Democrats break with Biden and push back on his reluctance to. And then the point I was trying to get to is that on top of that, there's this, and there's other things like the 11 million DACA plan that the Republicans are definitely not going to go for that. So if that's tacked on to the $1.9 trillion bill, we're going to have an issue. But they're going to do reconciliation, so it's not going to. Well, I mean, if they're going to do reconciliation and follow through with it, it may not be a problem. We'll see. That's if they have the backbone to do it. Several key Democrats pushed against Biden's reluctance to cancel $50,000 in student loan debt per person via executive order. Warren, Schumer, and AOC called on Democrats to continue pressing the White House to do it. Several top Democrats pushed on him for not doing it. Chucky, and Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts released a joint statement defending their plan and said student loan forgiveness was a step that both of Biden's predecessors in the White House had taken in the past. The pair expressed confidence that the president had the authority to act unilaterally and argued the proposal would help narrow the racial wealth gap and stimulate the economy. Other Democrats criticized Biden and doubled down on their support for major student relief. Rep. Ayanna Pressley, a House sponsor of the plan, tweeted that Biden did have the authority to act on his own. AOC tweeted the Democrats should keep pushing. Who cares what school someone went to? Entire generations of working-class kids were encouraged to go into more debt under the guise of elitism. I see where she's going with that, but like it's under the guise of success, under the guise of the American dream, which that's what I mean. Like yeah, I get what you say, but it's like it's not elite to suggest that people go to college. However, it is not pragmatic to suggest that everyone needs to go to college to be successful in life. Not everyone is built for college. One, okay, academia, and two, not everyone goes into academia into something that's profitable. Like, let's just call it what it is. We no longer live in a time where there was like a very short period in which acquiring a degree almost guaranteed you a decent job, right? But we've gone from a period in which academia was something like scarce and sacred to being prolific and universal, and everyone was encouraged to go, and that kind of fast tracked you through life ish, depending on certain circumstances, right? And now, really, that was a very short period. Now the education system is really, at least in this country, is shot, and the success rate going out of college, or rather the utilization rate coming out of college for people who, take their degree and do something profitable with it is very low. So, but lastly, this is wrong, says AOC. Nowhere does it say we must trade off early childhood education for student loan forgiveness. We can have both. At this point, given the circumstances, everything we've seen from the quick passing of the 2/3 of $1 trillion NDAA for weird stuff like I forgot. Oh my God, what was this stuff? There was tax cuts for racehorse owners. There was a declaration that China not choose the next Dalai Lama, which I mean I can respect, but that's something for another day, But I digress. Texas is going through massive blackouts through a storm, and there's just a couple of things I wanted to highlight. Apparently, Ted Cruz, the representative for Texas, he went to Cancun. He is such a grifter. He is the epitome. It's just, I mean, listen, I'm not here to go off and offend people and criticize. Well, no, I criticize, yes. But belittle, no. Right? It is hilarious in and of itself that simultaneously, while he's participating in the parade that is, the GOP in the Trump era, going back and forth, doing whatever he can to remain in power, he decides that going to Cancun while his state is in the middle of a storm and blackouts is a good look. Like besides the insensitivity of it, who in their right mind thinks this is all right? So let's just do this. And meanwhile, Beto O'Rourke is organizing wellness checks for seniors during the blackouts. All right. Someone's got their eye on the ball, huh? Yes, this Republican power vacuum is going to cause a lot of madness. It already has. You've already seen some of the crazies come out of the woodwork. But let's read here. Senator Ted Cruz has been accused of traveling to Cancun, Mexico, amid the ongoing crisis in Texas, where millions have been left without power or heat in freezing temperatures. Photos circulating on social media overnight appeared to show the senator at an airport and on an airplane. The idea that Cruz and his family had flown to Mexico soon spread to Twitter. In a statement released Thursday, hours after the controversy began, Cruz explained that he and his family left Texas to fly to Cancun at the request of his daughters. Wow. Let me be quiet. Hold on. With school canceled for the rest of the week, our girls asked to take a trip with friends. Wanting to be a good dad, I flew down with them last night and am flying back this afternoon, Cruz said. The Texas senator went on to blame his children. The Texas senator went on to confirm that he and his staff are in constant communication with state and local leaders in order to understand what happened to cause the state's energy crisis that left millions without power and water. Around 7 million Texans are also being asked to boil their water before use. Wow. As over 300 water plants remain without power and unable to treat the water supply. Oh, man. Did he throw his daughter under the bus? Did he do that? So, oh yeah, that's him. You can see the chunk. Well, let me not be rude, but you can. So yeah, that's him. So meanwhile, Beto O'Rourke is back in the spotlight as Texas continues to face a statewide crisis. Good lord, I might need a drink of water. Hundreds of thousands of Texans remain without power Thursday morning as millions more deal with burst pipes and other consequences of unprecedented winter weather. O'Rourke, the former 2020 Democratic presidential and 2018 Texas Senate candidate, has been making the TV rounds to call out the Republicans who shifted the blame for the power shortages and is organizing to check in on senior citizens through it all. Okay. Because they said wellness checks. Every time someone says check, I think money. Sorry. So he's just checking in on them. Okay. Well, that's decent publicity. But I was trying to highlight. I actually thought he was creating money because California, Gavin Newsom is doing something like that to coincide. Yes. So yes, I get excited when things start breaking. So as I was saying, to Gavin Newsom, to coincide with the $1,400 checks that are coming, is authorizing statewide checks of $1,600 to fill the gap. Right? That's good play, man. That's good play. This is what I'm saying. Despite everything that he's done, the fact that he's getting this to his people definitely is going to reconcile some of those numbers that he's lost, some of those points that he's lost, guaranteed. And again, you're seeing some things that are politically expedient also being things that are beneficial to the people, right? And that doesn't always happen, but it is the progressive movement that really has been championed and led by. Okay, so it kind of first started ish with Ron Paul. Because you see a crossover between those who. Then the problem with libertarianism is that it is despite the fact that there's been a rapid increase of support for third parties in each election. The problem with libertarianism is that it's too staunch. It is too forceful, right? Let's eliminate the Federal Reserve. Let's completely I think they want to get rid of one of their policy positions on education is to get rid of altogether the Department of Education. I'm definitely about revamping it. You can't get rid of it. You can't just get rid of these things without having something in place, or at the very least conceived to replace it. So it's definitely a message that's not going to get through, and an argument that I will try to make in a concise and edited video. But you're seeing the gaping wide hole not even gaping wide hole. Let me rephrase that. You're seeing the reorganization because it's no longer a power vacuum. The vacuum has been filled, there was no vacuum in the first place, I guess, as there is to say. Once Trump was dethroned, the Republican Party had no direction. There's no one at the head, and no one kind of understood where the party was going to go after he didn't win again. So the reality is that there wasn't necessarily a power vacuum, but a lack of someone or an ideology at the helm. So you have the Trumpists, you have contemporary or regular, we'll call them, good old-fashioned conservatives, and then you have establishment GOP members, like McConnell. And establishment GOP members, generally, this is why you saw so much rebuff from McConnell on things like minimum wage, on things like an increased stimulus, and now you're seeing that level of opposition decrease is because it's now politically expedient for him to do so. You can't be on the hill for as long as they have and not realize that you get elected by pleasing the people who elect you. So the question that you need to ask yourself is, well, who's really been getting him elected all these years, right? So that is the power of money in media. Let us move on to this shit show. We're almost there. We're almost at the COVID news. Republican support for Trump to play a role in party up 18 points from early January. Actually, I wanted to read this because this is actually about Texas. So Bill Gates, because we'll talk about Bill Gates. We may, because he got some Bill Gates COVID stuff. Bill Gates says Texas Governor Greg Abbott's explanation of power outages is actually wrong. It's like, Bill Gates calls you out. Bill Gates calls you stupid. That's something you can't undo. Even stupid people know when Bill Gates calls you stupid, you're not going to be You're not going to be doing your job for very much longer. Billionaire philanthropist, Bill Gates on Wednesday rebuked a claim made a day before by Governor Greg Abbott that put the blame for the state's massive cold weather power outage on the failure of renewable energy sources such as wind and solar. Oh, okay. It doesn't take Bill Gates to know that that's bullshit. In fact, extreme weather like winter storms that swept across the country in recent days will become more likely as climate change worsens, Gates told Yahoo, advocating instead for an expansion of renewable energy as part of his call for the U.S. to achieve net zero carbon emission by 2050. On Tuesday, Abbott claimed the outages on wind turbines and on the Green New Deal, a plan for combating climate change that the governor called a deadly deal for the United States of America. Our wind and our solar got shut down, and they were collectively more than 10% of our power grid. And that thrust Texas into a situation where it was lacking power on a statewide basis. It just shows that fossil fuel is necessary. Oh, I see. And now the perspective of this has changed. I just see. This is why it's good to you're welcome to have your presumptions, but you should always look into the claim. So I certainly, obviously, had my bias and had my presumption. I was just like, oh, Bill Gates called this Texan governor stupid. Well, I mean, he's a Texan governor. He probably is stupid. But no, we're going to find out what's actually going on here. Comes to find out, his claim actually is relevant. I mean, if you don't have an emergency store of an energy source that isn't going to be tampered with, that isn't going to be, like, hindered by adverse weather, well, that's dumb. Like, if you have an energy source that can be disrupted by adverse weather, then you need to have a backup battery or any sort of backup, right, that isn't going to be affected by adverse weather. I mean, it doesn't take a guy who plays video games to know that, right? It doesn't take a guy who doesn't like to lose stuff to take. It doesn't take a guy who like, I mean, what is this? So listen, the claim is relevant and valid, right? What's happening is that it's being kind of skewed because it is certainly a failure for sure. The problem is that no one wants to take direct blame for it, so it's being kind of skewed back on him as a claim of blame shifting rather than an analysis of critical failures along the energy pipeline. So there's definitely failures on his part because it's his state. He's the governor, so the buck stops with him. But the question then is like, well, was he hampered? Was he unable to be able to effectively deal with possible energy loss scenarios? Okay, because this is the thing. Was he legislatively hampered from actually creating a backup plan? If that's the case, that's something we need to look at. If he was just lazy, or if he was following political expedience by, not creating or not going down any path to have a backup, then that's on him. Motherfucker needs to take then. But again, he's identifying a very critical issue. If you have a power source that can be affected by weather, you need to have a backup power source that cannot be affected by weather, right? And here's the thing: I've seen plenty of videos of alternative energy sources that have been gobbled up. The patents have been gobbled up by the U.S. government. This has been happening since the 70s, and probably sooner. Because I mean, they had jetpacks in like the 50s. So anyway, I digress. That's another. I need to get a buddy on here and like do a weekend tech and weirdness. You just call it Weird Science, the Weird Science podcast. Anyway, there probably isn't already a Weird Science podcast. I digress. So they gobble up these patents. You don't see them. Blah blah blah. The point is that if you don't have an alternative energy source that cannot be affected by weather, then you have to use what's available. He's suggesting the subtext is that. Well, was there subtext? No, there wasn't subtext. He blamed it on the Green New Deal. He politicized the issue, thereby leaving himself vulnerable. And so that's why you had someone like Bill Gates come out, who is a staunch environmentalist, philanthropist, an ardent supporter of alternative fuel sources, and come out and say, that's wrong. That's actually wrong. And it's like, well, is it? I mean, it seems like simple logic to me. If you have a power source that can be affected by weather, you need to have a backup source that cannot be affected by weather in order to be safe. Let's continue. When asked about the blame, and I mean, it doesn't. I mean, do I need to tell you Texan, yeah. Do we need to, he's obviously a Republican, so there's obviously a political bias there, but he left himself open for the attack by politicizing the issue. He could have just said what he said without it just shows that fossil fuels is necessary. He could have said it shows that an alternative fuel source that cannot be affected by adverse weather events is necessary. And that would have been a safe pivot away from the politicization of the issue. So, when asked about blame at wind energy about Abbott, Gates said he's actually wrong. He's a dumbass. No, he's actually wrong. You can make sure wind turbines can deal with the cold. Okay. Let me see. The extreme cold probably wasn't anticipated for the wind turbines that far south, but the ones up north in Iowa and North Dakota do have the ability to not freeze up. So he didn't necessarily contradict himself. So the wind turbines probably weren't anticipating okay. So what he's saying is he's suggesting that the governor did not cold proof the wind turbines. Easy. See how easy that was? There's actually a legitimate argument going on here. One guy saying we need sources. Well, he's saying fossil fuel. He's championing fossil fuel. But what I'd like to is be more conservative and say we need fuel sources that are not affected by adverse weather, like fossil fuels. And the Green New Deal is actually to blame for all of this. That's where he fucked up. And then Bill Gates is like, well, that's actually wrong. You can cold proof wind turbines up north in Iowa and Dakota. They do just fine and they don't freeze up. But because these are in Texas and they're not used to this type of weather, that's probably what happened. So the question then is, do we blame the governor for not encountering? Yes, yes, especially given the strange climatological changes that have been going on really my entire life. All right, I'm 33. Really, my entire life. Yeah, I think I think that's totally legitimate. Wow, man, that's big. And it's one of those things where he's looking in the mirror, thinking to himself, like, the one thing we never thought would happen. It's like that's what everyone's been saying. The things that we never thought would happen are happening. That's the whole point of this, friend. The storm struck a large portion of the U.S. on Monday, bringing snowfall and ice that caused power outages for millions of people. Overall, more than 150 million people came under a winter storm warning. The extreme events are coming more often. The cold blast hit especially hard in Texas, where 4 million households lack power. Some conservatives blamed frozen wind turbines for the outage, but wind energy contributes a fraction of the state's power in the winter. And 10%. And that's the thing. It's only collectively more than 10%. It's only collectively, he said more than 10%, so like 11, 12. So even still, that's still 10% is somewhat significant. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that road. We're on the bottom of the show. Do I go down the Trump hole again? Let's actually do some COVID news. Let's get into the COVID block. There's some interesting things happening here. I wanted to highlight something the Financial Times said in regards to workers' wages, workers' rights, and the Black Death, the bubonic plague. The Black Death is often credited with transforming labor relations in Europe. Peasants, now scarce, could bargain for better terms and conditions. Wages started to rise as feudal lords competed for workers. Thankfully, a much lower mortality rate means such a transformation is unlikely to follow coronavirus. Okay, all right. So let's dissect this for a second. What are we thankful for? Everything you just said was horrible. You just said that a huge disease wiping out millions of people let poor people who weren't being paid well the ability to bargain to get paid decently. But because the current disease wiping out and killing few millions of people isn't as deadly, poor people who aren't being paid decent wages are not going to be able to bargain in order to be paid decent wages. What about any of that is anything to be thankful for? Please enlighten me as to the jovial nature I should be experiencing in regards to this horrible paragraph. Oh man, I don't. That's why I don't read the Financial Times. Not for finances, not for anything. But this just goes to show you what the sentiment of the Silicon left is. And I will always say the Silicon left. They make their bias clear every day. The consolidated power of FANG, really even, and like, yeah, really Amazon, and YouTube is under Google. So really it's FANG. FANG is the Silicon left. We've now given them a designation, right? The monster has a name. We have named it. Good Lord. All right. But, I just want to read that one more time for posterity. The Black Death is often credited with transforming labor relations in Europe, reads the Financial Times. Peasants, now scarce, could bargain for better terms and conditions. Because there's no one, because there's no workers. Wages started to rise as feudal lords competed for workers, for obvious reasons, because there's no one to work, and there's still always going to be people who want to buy things. There may not necessarily be people who always want to, facilitate those purchases. Thankfully, a much lower mortality rate means such a transformation is unlikely to follow coronavirus. Now, I'm sure they go on to try to put that in context. I just wanted to highlight that because I just found it amusing that just reading that in and of itself, what about that is something I should be thankful for? But moving along, as I was talking about earlier, Californians with low incomes to receive $600 checks under $9.6 billion COVID-19 economic package. This is probably other than the ICU related lockdowns, the regional ICU level related lockdowns. There we go. I've not really been a fan of Gavin Newsom. I think this is tremendous. This is a tremendous step in the right direction, especially given all the shit talking that Newsom does about having a GDP larger than some other countries, yet having over 25% of the nation's homeless, right? All of the problems that California has. As a person who lived in California for the last 5 years, I mean, my experience in California was life-changing. And I don't need, another time. But the point is that there's a lot of problems, a lot of glaring problems that have simple enough solutions. Nothing is simple when it comes to governance. But you know what I mean? They have very obvious, very evident solutions. This is a step in the right direction. So let's read. Governor Newsom and legislative leaders announced Wednesday that they have agreed to provide low-income Californians a $600 state stimulus payment to help them weather financial hardships during the pandemic, part of a $9.6 billion economic recovery package that also includes $2.1 billion in grants for small businesses. The Golden State stimulus payments provided, and I'd like to just pause and interject, why is this coming now? Why now? The payments provided under the state proposal, which will be expedited for legislative approval next week, are in addition to the $600 per person stimulus checks already approved by Communist, and would be on top of direct payments of up to $1,400 per person that have been proposed by House Democrats. The package put forward for immediate action also provides more than $400 million in new federal funds for stipends of $525 per enrolled child for all state-subsidized childcare and preschool providers, which serve some 400,000 children in subsidized care statewide. As we continue to fight the pandemic and recover, I'm grateful for the legislature's partnership to provide urgent relief and support for California families and small businesses where it's needed most, Newsom said. And it's about damn time. Seriously. We have come to the end of the show. We got through a good portion today, guys. We're making headway. There's just a litany of COVID news. Dave & Buster's has sued Governor Cuomo. City eateries that can't pay rent won't survive under Cuomo's 25% rule because although he's opened restaurants, he's only opened them to minimal capacity. There's a waitress who was fired from an NYC eatery for not getting the vaccine, right? This is what we said. The government's not going to mandate the vaccine. It's going to make it de facto, and they're going to push it onto businesses to push it onto employees and employers and employees. And I mean, some businesses are obviously getting started ahead of time, but we will, we will get to that another day. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what I'm doing. By another day, I mean tomorrow. Please just be well to yourself and to each other. Take care.